What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well this morning. We are on Unit 35, Session 5. This is a longer unit, and technically it starts in the month of August. So if you're OCD a little bit like me, that kind of drives you crazy, but it's a great lesson, and I'm really excited about it. So it's Unit 35, Session 5, and we are in the book of Jude this week. And so we're going to be looking at verses 3 and 4 and verses 12 through 25. And Jude is really just one. It's not even a chapter. It's just one chapter. So when someone says Jude 3, they're not talking about the third chapter in Jude. They're talking about the third verse. So anyways, Jude 3 and 4 and 12 through 25 is where we're at. Jude is not a book that we turn to a lot, but it has a great message. And it's such a valuable message, especially for us today. I actually have some of these books. They're called Shepherd's Notes, and they're really helpful and really awesome for just getting some quick facts about books of the Bible. So this one's First and Second Peter in the book of Jude, and so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today kind of gathered out of using this to aid me in my study. So I highly recommend those especially if some of those books you just don't know a ton of background stuff about, but they're really awesome. So definitely recommend ordering some of those. But anyways, so the book of Jude, what we're talking about. So Jude basically introduces his letter by saying that he hoped to write about the salvation that we share in Jesus, but he found it necessary to write about defending the faith. Defending the faith is kind of the theme of the book. And the reason they had to defend it was because there were Gnostics that had come about that had basically were attempting to muddy down God's word, to dilute it a bit, if you will. So these Gnostics, one of the things they believed was that God's grace was so good and so immense that it means as believers, if you've been accepted by God and you've been a recipient of his grace, there's no guidelines for you to live by. And that's a problem, right? We know that's a problem. In fact, this morning, I was reading Romans chapter 6, and it talks about how sufficient his grace is and how deep it is. And it says, should we sin all the more? And then Paul says, by no means. He kind of asks this question to himself, and he says, by no means should we sin more. Right? We understand that the love that God has lavished upon us and the gift of salvation that he's given is not to be taken advantage of. In fact, if we truly love God, we won't want to dive into those sins. We might be tempted from time to time, but we don't want to live in those sins because we realize how purposeless it is and how it hurts the heart of God and how it hurts our standing with him. There's nothing we can do to lose our salvation, but there's certainly things we can do to lose our intimacy with him, right? And sin does that to us, right? So as far as what Jude says in this book, I think it's important that we first clarify why he's writing. And he's writing because these Gnostics had come in and they were saying God's grace is sufficient. You can do whatever you want. Well, we know that's not the truth. I said I'd be bringing a lot out of this little book, and so I'm going to do that. Kind of quick little 5 points about this of what Jude encourages the believers to stand strong in. And you can rewind this video and stuff so you can write some of these down. But I thought these were really good and really good things for us to focus on as we teach on Sunday. So one, and this comes from verses 20 through 23. One, he says to the believers, build up themselves in the knowledge of God's truth. So the first thing, how do we defend ourselves against the deceit coming around from people preaching a false gospel, is to build themselves up in the truth, right? If you know the truth, you'll be able to spot a lie. That's a classic and an awesome principle that we have to remember, and it's a timeless principle as well. So build themselves up in God's truth. Second thing, pray fervently. Pray fervently. Let your prayer be unceasing. Let your prayer be intense. Be fervent in your prayer. Number 3, to live in God's love by obeying his commands. Live in God's love by obeying his commands. I think that's really good. Fourthly, to fan the flame of the Christian hope. Fan the flame of the Christian hope. When we fan a flame, it gets brighter and it gets stronger, right? And so many times that comes through our encouragement to one another, right? So fan that flame of the hope within us that comes through the mutual encouragement that we have when we encourage other people. And then finally, to evangelize to those that might have been deceived. To evangelize to those that might have been deceived. Tell them the truth, right? Ultimately, if we care about people, we'll tell them the truth, whether it hurts their feelings or not. And we've got to do that in love. However, that's something that we oftentimes shy away from because we don't want to hurt their feelings. But in reality, like, we care much more about someone's feelings. We care about their souls, right? And we care about them believing what is true. So I hope those principles were helpful for you. And thank you guys so much for teaching. And we've only got 1 month left in our Round Through the Gospel project, and it's a 3-year circuit, so we'll just start it back over, but more about that coming soon. Thanks, guys.